Hi guys.
Hi guys.
1 second. Okay, we're going to try again. There we are. Thank you for your patience. Today, this is going to be our self-esteem webinar. So my name is Letitia and I'm a wellbeing practitioner with Shine. We got Mel, who's our team lead, and we got Rhian, who's also a wellbeing practitioner. And we got Rebecca Phillips on Teams, who is a team lead for the Bridgend team. So a bit of housekeeping before we start. The training is going to be recorded today. We will stop the training, we will stop the recording at the end. So if anybody got any questions, if we can ask them after we've stopped recording. If we can maintain confidentiality and not disclose any names if you're discussing a child and young person as well, please. Please keep your mic on mute during the training and you're welcome to keep your camera off. At the end as well, this video is going to be on the CTM CAMS website, so we won't be sending the slides out to anybody. But if you go into CTM CAMS and a specialist service, it should be Shine, which is the whole school, the school's wellbeing team, and the videos are going to be on there for you. So these are some of the things that we're going to aim to cover with you today. So introduction of the service, common challenges, how you can help, praise effort, not just the results, encouraging independence and responsibility, listening and validating, supporting healthy friendships and activities, and some practical tools then as well. So I'll just explain a little bit about Shine if people are not really sure who we are. So we come under the CAMS umbrella and we are a school service. So we go into all the primary schools and the high schools in the Cwmtaf area. So as Tribune, we all cover the Merthyr Cannon area, and Beck on Teams covers the Bridgend area. In primary schools, we offer intervention, low-level intervention with children around different topics, so self-esteem being one of them. Emotions, low mood, don't think of anything else, resilience. We do group work, one-to-one and whole class stuff as well. And we offer parent drop-ins and drop-ins with staff too. In the high schools, it looks a little bit different. So the team leads go into the high schools and it's more of a parent drop-in or a staff drop-in. We do also offer a whole class intervention with high schools when it's like PSE day and things. Okay. So self-esteem, what is self-esteem? So self-esteem is how we see and value ourselves, our sense of self-worth and our beliefs in our abilities. Self-esteem differs from confidence. Confidence is our ability to complete certain tasks, and self-esteem is our overall self-worth. Naturally, our self-esteem fluctuates, so meaning the way we view ourselves or value ourselves can change due to different circumstances and situations, and this is completely normal. What we find as well is self-esteem and resilience underpins every other well-being or mental health concern that we see, especially in young children and young people. So if we can improve the self-esteem, the other issues we see can improve as well. As a team, I'm sure across the board, especially my schools, I find that self-esteem is probably the main intervention that I deliver with children, and that's group work, one-to-one, or maybe whole class as well. And probably the other areas will probably see the same as well, don't they?
And it explains why we're doing this topic for the webinar today, because when we were pulling all of our data, the overwhelming theme that we could see across all of the 3 locality areas that schools had asked us to deliver was self-esteem. So hence the topic.
Okay, now over to you.
Oh.
What do you want to
Yeah.
Oh, still me, sorry. Why is it important? Self-esteem can influence our relationships with family and friends, our performance, especially maybe academically, our motivation, our decision making, our resilience, mental health in general, and our overall well-being.
So some statistics, according to the National Science Foundation, the average person has about 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day, and of those, 80% are negative, 95% are exactly the same repetitive thoughts as the day before. That's from Psychology Today 2017. And we've got a little video now called Radio Doom and Gloom. Bear with us a second.
Yes, I'm going to have to go off this and share my screen for you to see this video, if that's okay. Okay. It's just a 4-minute video, this is, guys.
The human mind is a lot like radio doom and gloom. It broadcasts a lot of negative stuff about the past. Old painful memories, hurts, memories of failure, things that went wrong, times people mistreated you. It also tends to broadcast a lot of doom and gloom about the future. Catastrophizing, predicting the worst, worrying about bad things that will happen or what will go wrong. And it also tends to find a lot of problems in the present. Wherever it looks, it finds problems. And that is a normal, natural human mind. Now, you can do positive thinking courses and learn to think more positively, there's no doubt, but that's not going to stop radio doom and gloom from broadcasting. That's not magically going to get rid of all your negative thoughts. Just like if you learn to speak Spanish, you're not going to forget English. So what are we supposed to do? Have you ever done some sort of really engaging activity like reading one of your favorite books and there was a radio playing in the background and you were so engaged, absorbed in what you were doing, you hardly even noticed the radio was there. It was just playing away. And then maybe one of your favorite songs came on the radio and suddenly you were really aware of the radio, maybe even singing along with it. And then the song changed and the radio kind of faded into the background again. What if you could learn to do that with your own mind? There are times when your mind is broadcasting really useful, helpful stuff about values and goals and strategies to make your life richer and fuller and more meaningful. What about at those times you could kind of tune into the radio and make good use of that kind of useful stuff that your mind is telling you? And the rest of the time when it's doing its radio doom and gloom stuff, just kind of let it play on in the background. This is very different to trying to ignore a radio, trying to not hear it. Have you ever tried to not hear or ignore a radio or a loud voice in a restaurant or a lawnmower outside your house? Isn't it the case the more you tried to ignore or not hear it, actually the more it bothered and disturbed you? It's also very different to bringing in a second radio trying to drown out the first one. Let's bring in radio logical and rational, or radio positive and optimistic to try to drown out radio doom and gloom. It is very hard to focus your attention on an activity, to engage in doing something that matters, while you've got two radios playing two different channels in the background. One simple way that you can do this is just to notice when the radio is broadcasting its doom and gloom stuff and just simply name it. Here's radio doom and gloom broadcasting in my head, or there's my mind worrying or predicting the worst, or there's the I can't do it story, or there's the I'm not good enough story. Whatever it is that radio's doing, just non-judgmentally notice it and name it. So we don't get into a battle with these thoughts, we don't try to run away from these thoughts, we don't get swept away or bogged down with these thoughts. we just let them come and go like a radio playing in the background, and instead we focus our attention and our energy on living by our values, doing things that help us to create a rich, full and meaningful life.
Okay, and we're back. Here we are. Right, so common challenges. These could be things like peer pressure with their peers, like not fitting in, how they behave, things like their clothing, their branded clothing, things like that. The next one would be social media comparisons. So there's so many things on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and there's AI involved, there's filters involved. So it's hard to know what's real and what's not. And it's hard to compare yourself to something that's not real. The next would be academic stress. Then family dynamics. So that'd be, for example, an older sibling thinking it's funny putting another sibling down, but that would actually affect their self-esteem.
I think we can all be a little bit guilty of that.
Yeah,
yeah. You know, it's we were also sort of saying about things like whether as parents, we'll come back to the sibling thing now, Tish, sorry. But, you know, as parents, sometimes we can be a little bit guilty of, if you've got many children, I've got many children. So, you know, sometimes you can say, oh, you know, the oldest child is generally sort of the one that's a bit more mature. And we can all be a bit guilty of saying to the younger ones, oh, why can't you be more like your sister? Why can't you be more like your older brother? And so, you know, we're automatically causing that child, that young person, to automatically feel that they are not good enough. Tisha had something interesting to say about siblings as well.
Yeah, so I think growing up, I'm the older child, and I'm more academic than my sister, who was 5 years younger than me. And I think my parents kind of, you know, they probably said things like, oh, you know, why can't you be more like Letitia? And, you know, my sister's very different from me. We've got very different interests. And I think she felt that pressure of, you know, maybe why aren't I doing as good in my GCSEs as me, for instance? I wanted to go to uni. My sister never wanted to go to uni. So I think she felt that pressure from my parents, even if they didn't say it out loud. I think they could feel that maybe I need to be more like her. And I think it took a conversation between us both for me to say, look, you know, if school isn't for you, and because she stayed to do her A levels, and she wasn't enjoying it. There was, you know, what she wanted to do after school, I suppose, wasn't nothing to do with the A levels that she was doing. And so I think it took me having a conversation with her, being like, look, just because I done it doesn't mean you have to do it. And it's probably better to, you know, come out of education if that's not for you, start a job. And that's what she'd done. And I could see like the difference in her, and she was much happier. So yeah, it does show, and it is tricky when you do see it kind of happening. You know, I was quite young, obviously, when I was seeing it happen.
And I think it's easier to see it retrospectively. But you know, and I'll be the first one to say I've got 2 children left at home. One of them's just finished her A levels. She's applying for medicine. You know, we know that she's going to end up being a doctor. My youngest daughter is probably going to end up being a cage fighter. There couldn't be, you know, 2 totally more different characters. But, you know, the younger one is also very good at all the creative things. She's very artistic. She's musical. She's sporty. Whereas the older of the 2, again, just very academic, very focused. So all of our children are not created equally. So again, it's about kind of considering how we perceive that and how we communicate that, instead of applauding their individual little characters and their individual skills and traits. Sometimes we can run the risk of comparing and contrasting. And in terms of family dynamics as well, I don't know how many of us, again, will be a little bit guilty about the way that we speak to ourselves in front of the children. You know, like you've done something like, oh, you're so stupid. And so they are already learning by modeling us, which again we'll come up to it in a while, but by modeling our thoughts and behaviors. Well, actually, oh, if my primary caregiver, my trusted adult, thinks she's stupid, oh, there's no chance for me. So again, it's about really sort of trying to think and be aware of, what happens within the home, even more so than anywhere else, because the home is literally the sanctuary from the world, isn't it? So,
and like you said, retrospectively, looking back from my childhood, I've got an older brother, and I remember wearing something quite unusual for me to wear.
Yeah.
And I'd come downstairs and he'd say, "Oh, what are you wearing that for?" And I never wore it again. So that I think that affected me a little bit.
Yeah, of course it does.
But yeah, I think social media as well, going back to social media, that's a big thing in schools at the moment. I'm pretty sure you as well.
Yeah.
Staff and parents come to us and say, "Oh, what can we do about social media?" and how much they're spending on social media, how much time they're spending on it.
I always asking when I do groups or one-to-one classes, what social media platforms are we on?
Yeah.
We talk about maybe age appropriate stuff. And yeah, I speak to them about, what we see is the best of, and I say that I'm guilty for it. If you went on my Instagram,
oh yeah,
you'd see my lovely little life that I live.
Perfect life.
Yeah. But you don't, you don't see maybe the other days that we have, maybe we struggle a little bit, or something nice that have happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, we primary schools and high schools, we talk about social media a lot, don't we?
We do, yeah, and there's a lot of requests for support around social media really as well. So yeah, family dynamics, that's a big one. Also, if there's domestic violence in the family, even just parents putting each other down, whether that's in the same room as the child or in a different room, children can hear a lot of things through walls, and they take a lot of things in. So, people need to be mindful as well. Thinking traps then, such as I'm not good enough or everyone is better than me. And then being overly critical of yourself, so putting yourself down all the time, focusing on perceived wrongs and failures and not focusing on your successes. And then thinking that you are unworthy of people's time and effort. And that would be, so as a child, if they do something, if they have a negative feedback, they wouldn't necessarily think that, oh, I'm unworthy of people's time and effort straight away. It would be over a prolonged period of time.
Interestingly, just before we go on about the thinking traps one, so somebody that I know had recently said to me that their daughter was having a hard time at school. They're in secondary school, and some of the other pupils had been not terribly kind to her, and she'd come and said to her parent, well, if more than one person is saying this, it must be true because lots of people are saying it. So when we think about those negative thinking traps, so somebody says, oh, you're stupid, you're ugly, or whatever other unpleasant things young people might say to each other, it can become the reality if it is reinforced as well. If one person says it, you can be like, okay, they're just being mean. But if that's reinforced by a small group of people, or if it's revisited more than once, so if this goes on over a sustained period of time, it becomes an entrenched sort of thinking pattern. So and it affects your whole belief system, your core beliefs.
So next we're going to show a video.
Yeah.
Rian just mentioned about thinking traps. So this is one of the videos that we show in our self-esteem intervention with the children. It's again about 4 minutes long, but I think it's a really good video, especially for the children to watch, because it kind of names these thinking traps and these negative thoughts that we have. I have to share my screen again.
No audio, guys.
Okay. One sec.
Imagine a day full of negative thoughts where everything just does not seem to be going your way and you're stuck thinking about how horrible everything is. Even if something starts to go well, your brain just will not let you forget that mistake you made on your math test or the fact that you spilled milk all over your table at lunch. If this has happened to you, then you have a bad case of the ants, or automatic negative thoughts. These thoughts are always negative. They leave you feeling pretty bad. They tend to stop you from problem solving. They're definitely unwanted, and they're believable because you're stuck in the web of negative thinking. And once you get stuck, it can be kind of tricky to get yourself out on your own. These thoughts are just like ants at a picnic. When there's just one or two, we can manage them. But when they swarm or invite their ant buddies to your lunch, they get so annoying or overwhelming that they start to take away any of the joy you felt from just being in the sunshine eating your lunch in the first place. Negative thoughts are totally normal. We experience all sorts of thoughts in our day, so the ant buddies are bound to show up with their negativity at some point or another. In fact, our negative thoughts are actually there to try and keep us safe by helping us identify what might hurt us and helping us to try and learn from our mistakes. Unfortunately, when we're stuck thinking the same negative thought over and over again, it tends to spiral into even more negative thinking, which leaves us feeling pretty stuck. When the swarm of ant buddies takes over, it can leave us feeling afraid, anxious, worried, or even angry. The ant buddies tend to pop up without you even being aware of them at first. Once the ants show up, they can change the way you feel about yourself, other people, or even the world around you. There are 15 main ant buddies that cause negative thoughts to pop up for us. When these bugs come around, they try to change the way we think, which can then lead to problematic feelings and behaviors. From Betty, who makes us blame everybody else, to Marty, who thinks he can read the minds of other people, and all the others in between, each ant buddy has one core job: to make you feel bad about yourself, what's going on around you, or what might happen in the future. 15 seems like a lot, but don't worry. The more you learn about them, the more you'll recognize the ones that come around for you the most. There are ways to swat or stash these bugs away when they have come to visit. There are a few simple things you can try in order to get the ant buddies to bug off. First, focus on recognizing the thought. Swat the ant buddy and stop the bug in its tracks using a thought-stopping statement. This part happens fast, but it's so important. Once you've swatted and stopped the bug, you can then catch it to take a closer look. Plop it in a jar and question the thought by writing it down. Look deeper into how it's making you feel. Is the bug buddy's thought making you feel sad, angry, worried, maybe something else? Then examine the bug until you think you know exactly which ant buddy is causing the problem. Is it Ollie or maybe Betty? Once you know, use questions that will specifically challenge the bug. Finding the truth of what is going on makes it much easier to solve the problem and makes it more likely that the bugs won't stick around. Don't forget, if you are having a hard time figuring out how to get unstuck from the web of negative thinking, find a trusted adult that can help you catch and question the ant buddy that you have sticking around. It's pretty easy to get trapped in our thoughts by the ant buddies, leading to self-doubt, anger, or worry. You may not be able to completely control when the ant buddies show up, but you do have the power to choose if you're going to accept what they're telling you or question them to make them leave. The more you practice catching and questioning them, the more likely they are to bug off. To learn more about the ant buddies and what you can do when they come around, visit selsketches.com.
Okay, you go back to the normal screen. Okay.
Okay, so pause to self-talk. So number one is to identify. So recognize when you were thinking negatively about yourself. So that could be around school, when you're with certain friends, in a community, could be if you've got a, if a child has a certain subject that day, their negative thoughts could come from that. write them down to see if there are any patterns. That could be the patterns. Number 2, challenge negative thoughts. So question whether these negative thoughts are true. Ask yourself if there's any evidence to support these thoughts, and are there more balanced and realistic thoughts they could have. Number 3, use positive affirmations. So make a list of the positive statements about yourself. Repeat them, the items on the list every day. For example, I am capable and strong. I think Mel, you had an analogy for that. Go on.
I've forgotten it. Oh no, I did. Sorry.
Yeah.
I got so engrossed in. So something that I like to say to people about using positive affirmations is that our thoughts, they're a bit like echoes. So I always think if you visualize yourself now, you stood at the end of the, at the sort of on the almost where the precipice of the Grand Canyon is. So whatever you shout out is coming back to you tenfold. So if you were on, on this ledge shouting out, I'm rubbish, and what you hear 10 times back, I'm rubbish, I'm rubbish, I'm rubbish. But if you actually shout out things like, oh, I'm incredible, I'm amazing, I'm clever, I'm capable, I'm strong, then you're hearing those things back 10 times. So ultimately, our brain responds to the thing that goes. So the thing that we put out is also the thing that we hear. That affects our brain. We can sort of, if you like, if you think of the brain being like a computer, we can reprogram thoughts. It takes some doing. It's not quite as instantaneous as an echo, but like everything else, and again, I like to think in analogies. It's a bit like saying to yourself, oh, I'd like to run a marathon. If I woke up this morning and said I'm going to run a marathon, my chances of success today would have been probably about 0%. But if I say to myself, I'm going to run a marathon in 6 months, then that's perfectly doable, and I can train for that, and I can put that in place so that I'm able to achieve and accomplish that over a series of achievable, timely goals set. So again, positive affirmations, we will hear and respond to the way that we speak to ourselves, the way that others respond to us and speak to us as well. Okay.
Yeah, and we like to do positive affirmations as well in the sessions with pupils. For example, making up a jar with positive affirmations that they've thought of themselves.
It's a bit like when you get the fortune cookies from when you have a Chinese takeaway as well, isn't it? You're like, oh my gosh, this is so me, You're gonna live forever and be a millionaire by the time you're 30. Yeah, I'll take that.
Number 4 is focus on strengths and achievements. So acknowledge your strengths and past successes, which can be quite tricky, especially when you're in that negative thought process. But a way around that is to keep a journal of daily achievements, no matter how small they are. So if you are in those negative thoughts and that spiral, you can have a look at that journal and pick yourself back up. Number 5, surround yourself with positivity. So spend time with people who are supportive and positive. Engage in activities that make you feel good about yourself. And then as adults, we can model healthy self-talk around the children and young people by talking kindly about yourself in front of them and avoid using half self-criticism, like negative words about yourself.
So I feel that children are actually a lot more switched on and a lot more astute than we give them credit for. Part of this is an evolutionary tool, if you like, to be able to gauge danger. So when we praise them and it is not authentic or it is somehow not genuine, I think if they can sense that, it's important for us to praise our children. However, we need to differentiate, if you like, between genuine and heartfelt praise and just sort of any sort of rehearsed rhetoric because you're looking for something, because they'll quickly pick up on that and then they will dismiss all of it. So none of it will be of any value. So it is really important when we're thinking about praising our young people that we do so, but it comes from a genuine place. And sometimes, it can be really tricky when you're in the moment and, we feel frustrated or irritated by something, or you can see that they are struggling and we can't quite find a way around it. Focus on what they did and sort of, all the stuff that went on behind the scenes as well. And again, think of it, if you like you've been to see a play, It was a really great play. Everybody on the stage was fantastic. But, you know, that was months and months of preparation and rehearsal behind that. So, you know, focus on what they've done. So if it is something classroom based and they've won something, or they maybe got a B instead of, you know, they were hoping for an A, but they got a B, just like kind of like, well, you know, you worked really, really hard for that. And not just like, oh, well done on your B, because that will be quickly forgotten as well. But, you know, you studied really hard. You committed your time, you had time away from your friends, and you've really, you know, focused and made this a priority area for you. And I'm really happy and proud of you for that. And your future self will certainly thank you for that. So again, just trying to find praise that suit you, you know, your children and your young people better than anybody else. So it's about sort of coming from it with from a really genuine and authentic perspective. Okay, and responsibility. So this is something that I feel quite strongly about. And I think we are so quick, we're so protective of our children, you know, we're kind of all ingrained with almost this lioness, you know. I will say about my children, you know, I'm a mother of 5. I've now got 3 grandchildren as well. And I will say out loud, the wind doesn't blow on my children without my permission. Now, that's what I'll say out loud. But what I will also ensure is that they do have opportunities and occasions to fail, to reflect on that, to see how that feels. Was it the end of the world? Hardly. I mean, for us as adults, we can think back to something that may have happened maybe when you were 15 or 10. And most sort of more minor things that kind of feel like the end of the world at the time. A few years later, they've forgotten, or they haven't quite got that sort of a mammoth momentum that that you kind of give them, that, you know, you kind of give it when you're in the moment. So also, you know, when I think back to my parental conversations, my dad was great at, we'd go home from school and he'd say, okay, so what have you failed at today? There was a lot of roasting went on in our home. So I think we became very quickly resilient, you know. But it was, when I say roasting, it was always done with love. It wasn't criticism. It wasn't putting down. It was, you know, reality check, you know. So that was always helpful. But my dad would say to us around the dinner table, he'd say, so what have you messed up today? What have you failed at? And other people would say, that's really bizarre. But as soon as we kind of got that out of the way, well, actually, Dad, do you know what? I was doing this today. I was asked to sing in the choir. I did this voice crack at this, you know, you should have heard me. I butchered, you know, an unbutcherable song, you know, that type of thing. We'd all sort of, you know, have our little moment of being able to openly express what we hadn't done particularly well that day before we went on to the important things. Like, well, okay, so what did go well? What have you done well? And all right, well, maybe do a different song choice next time in the choir or something, you know, those types of things. And as parents, again, as we sort of trying to say, we are constantly trying to protect our children. And that is often to their detriment. We do way too much for our children. And when we do so, we might think that we are being helpful to them. But what we're actually doing, and this is psychological studies that have showcased that this is the case, that what we're doing is, as parents, we're accidentally stealing their self-esteem when we rush to solve every problem, when we remove every struggle, every hurdle. We think that we're being loving, but actually, here's what's really happening. You're building your own self-esteem rather than your child's, because you think, oh, I've really helped my child today. And they are going to bed thinking, oh, do you know, I can't do anything for myself. My mother, my parents, my carers, my grandparents, they have to do everything for me. I can't do it for myself. So when your child comes to you, here's a good example. When your child says, oh, Mum, I'm bored, Dad, I'm bored, your brain immediately goes into trying to provide a solution for that. Oh, well, have you tried? Oh, well, I'm busy a sec. Why don't you put the TV on or watch something on YouTube or go out into the garden? And we give them this list of solutions. But maybe we'd be better placed to say along the lines of, well, I wonder what you're going to do about that. What do you think could alleviate your boredom? I mean, I know I'm much older than today's current generation. And so for me, the options, if you were bored, was to self-entertain. So you'd read a book, or you'd go in the garden, or you'd go out to play with your friends, or, you know, there wasn't all of these instantaneous, I couldn't scroll through Instagram reels or go onto YouTube or any of these things. You know, you literally, my parents were like, well, I'm doing things, you know, so off you trot, go and, I know, entertain yourself, I suppose. So if you think character and self-esteem comes from feeling competent, and it does, how great do we feel when we've achieved something? You know, think about the last time you went to a job interview and got the job. You know, you come home thinking, you know, I prepped for that, did really well. Or the last time you've decided to do something that you'd not done before, I know, cooked a particular meal, or tried something new, and you feel great for it. I know young people are no different in that respect. So when kids solve their own problems, they learn the message that they are having is, I can handle things. When we, as the parents, as the caregivers, solve everything for them, they learn that they need someone else to handle things. And it's a hard truth to accept, but every time we jump in, we're actually reinforcing the message that we don't actually believe that they're capable. And no, which is the furthest thing from the truth, because what are we trying to do? We're trying to support them, we're trying to help them. But actually, you know, a little bit of a little bit of sort of controlled or positive risk taking across the board will actually allow your young person to decide, you know, that they can achieve more than maybe that they initially thought. It's a bit like, you know, when you've got toddlers and they fall over and we rush over, they will cry immediately. But if you kind of wait a second to kind of see how hurt they are, they'll let you know if they're really hurt, and then they'll cry, and then we swoop in and rescue them. But I think maybe sort of, maybe I was a bit more of a harsher parent. I used to say, well, come on, kids, you're not dead. Come on, up you get, you know, up you get. And it also teaches our children, when we allow them to have this positive risk taking, it teaches our children something called autonomy, which is the ability to make their own decisions and control their own lives. And they might be age 4, 5, 6, or 16, or 18, or in my case, my oldest is coming up 31. You know, there are still times where, you know, they come to you for support and help. And it's about looking for ways in which you can maybe guide and facilitate and direct them to come to their own conclusions or to find their own solutions, if you like, rather than giving them the solutions already. Well, here's one I made earlier. You know, that's kind of what we want to get away from a little bit. Okay, and healthy relationships. You know, we've all got healthy relationships, or we've observed healthy relationships, and we've also observed unhealthy relationships. So we know the difference between them. So there's a saying that I've kind of come across over the years that says that we are a sum of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And I remember when I was young, again, my mother saying to me, when I was in a friendship group, you're behaving like this because so-and-so behaves like that, and you're kind of following the crowd. I used to be really offended. I was like, no, I can make my own mischief. Thank you very much. I don't need to be led into temptation. I can do that right by myself. But you know, it is important to realize that our children are a result of the people that they spend the most time with. And so you want those relationships to be wholesome and healthy and positive. So we can't stop them having to sit by somebody in class that isn't very nice or very pleasant. But what we can do is ensure that their valuable time and their valued time is spent with people that boost their confidence. So we need to encourage them to spend time with people that are supportive, people that make them feel good about themselves. Again, as parents, how many times have we heard when we say something and they turn around and they say, well, you have to say that. You're duty bound to say that because you're my mother. My children say that to me all the time. Well, you have to say that because you're my mother. Well, I'm also brutally honest, so actually I will tell them if the opposite is true as well. But, you know, not in a critical way, but in an honest and open dialogue. So having open communication, mutual respect, hugely important. And don't forget, particularly when your children are younger, when they're primary school age, they look to us for everything. They think that we know everything. And I think it's kind of when they get to adulthood that they realize that we were actually just grown-ups, just trying to get through the day and trying to make good decisions on their behalf, trying to do the best that we could with our resources, whether they be physical resources like time and money, or whether they are with emotional resources. And that will again be dependent on the type of upbringing that we've had, the healthy relationships that we've had with our families. We call them a family script, which kind of does get handed down from generation to generation. So how, when I was a little girl, I will tell everybody as well, you know, I won the parent lottery. My parents are fantastic, but there was certainly some components of their parenting that I certainly wouldn't want to replicate when I became a parent. So there was some things that I took from my examples, and other things I was like, I certainly wouldn't be doing that. So again, you know, it's about looking back on reflecting on our own experiences and how we want to move forward with our own children and the next generation. Conflict management is part of, you know, is a healthy part of growing up. Conflict resolution. I think sometimes, you know, when children particularly engage in sport and activities, I'll use that as an example. My youngest daughter, she plays football, and sometimes they're playing against a team and it's hugely competitive, or somebody's playing dirty, you know, and you have to learn, because of good sportsmanship, you have to learn to navigate tricky situations whilst on the pitch. You know, really important lessons then that can be learned off the pitch. Again, when they're having their playtime in schools, you know, this is a really important time to think, well, actually, so-and-so's taken something away from me that I wanted, that I was playing with first. So how do I respond to that? Do I, you know, try and have an open dialogue with them and explain to them that's not cool? Or do I just clock them one? Or do I just go away crying, thinking, oh, they're bigger, they're stronger, why would I? So again, it's about conflict resolution is really integral to how we manage challenges and trials as adults. So the training ground is now, you know, the training ground is now as far as our children and our young people are concerned. It's also okay for them to say no. Just before we go on, you know, I just caught my eye about the bit about healthy boundaries. You know, it's okay for the children to say no. And again, you know, I know that generations are changing, and there's lots of positives that are coming from that, but it's important for them to rely on their own instincts if they don't feel comfortable around an adult or another sort of older child or peers. It's okay for them to express that and have a conversation with them about that. It's okay for them to put boundaries in place. Just because they are little and is convenient for us, they don't always have to do as they're told in that respect. But again, it's about having open dialogue and allowing them to feel heard, to allow them to feel listened to, because this will boost their self-esteem and allow them to feel that they are part of the essential decision making in terms of their own lives. We've got a bit of a case study for you here. I won't read this out for you, partly because the writing's too small and, you know, you've heard enough of my voice. So I'll give you a minute just to read through that. I think we can all recognize ourselves as being in situations like this, again, whether it's been work related or at school, where you've been asked to do something, you don't believe that you have the capability or the confidence to do that. We get a bit panicky ahead of time, especially a bit like these guys ahead of today's presentation. For me, it's more about like, I can't do the technology, so I rely on everybody else to sort the technology out. And so just to outline that we've all felt, as Catherine has felt here. Yeah. Okay, but she had a really positive experience. So she really came out of her comfort zone. She had a positive reinforcement when she could see her friends and her little support group actually appearing engaged in the things that she was saying. She was well prepared ahead of time. So she didn't just get up there and think, oh, you know, I'm rubbish, and flounder through it. She was well prepared. And positive things came from this. So this has entirely changed the script in her mind. So she's taken something that she thought she was awful at and that she was incapable of doing. She's had an experience. I mean, how easy would it have been for her to have come to me as her mother and say, I really don't want to do this presentation. Can I stay home today? And me would say, oh, baby, if it makes you that upset, of course you can. Because, you know, that's an easy thing to do. And we think we're being kind when we're doing these types of things. But yeah, just allow them to try and express, well, what's making you feel like this? Let's try it. Let's see if you like it. Let's see how it goes. You might surprise yourself. We always used to laugh at Letitia here, and I remember we were doing a presentation at a school, and all of a sudden I kept thinking, what is that buzzing noise? What is that buzzing noise? And apparently it was her Apple Watch telling her to sit down because her heart rate was so high. And on the surface of it, she had this lovely, calm facade. You would never have guessed that she was quite that anxious. But I think her watch was telling her she was on the cusp of a heart attack. So, but she did it, and now she does it frequently, and now she's amazing at it. But if you were to ask her, I'm sure that she would say, if she knew how much this type of part, this component of the job would take up, she wouldn't have applied for the job in the first place. And so we are very glad maybe that we concealed that from her. So a positive outcome for Catherine in terms of this case study. So again, I'll just allow you to have a minute to read through the tips here. It just allows us to really think and reflect about how we can change the way that we think, change the way that we act, and how we can go about that. Because whilst it's important to recognise that our young people are significantly struggling with self-esteem, we know what self-esteem is now. We know that it's a really, really big deal for people, particularly those that are actively engaged in social media, and particularly children at school. But this is a case of like, so what can we do? What can we do? What can we do differently? Okay, then over to you, Tisha, when you're ready.
Just to end today then, looking at practical tools, family check-ins would be really good. Speak about some, like we said at the start, one thing that's one thing good that's happened today. When I speak to the children in my group, and I try and say them, it could be really small. Like for me, sitting down and having a coffee before work, that's really good for me instead of rushing out the door and rushing to my school. If I got time to have breakfast and a coffee in the morning, that's something good for me to remember, even if my day hasn't been the greatest. Gratitude jar, write down good things about yourself, and what you feel grateful for. Again, we do this a lot in our sessions. We say like old jars, don't we? Like, pickled onion jars, empty them, clean them out, decorate them all nice, and write down on pieces of paper, just nice little statements, little affirmations. And they can pull them out maybe once in the morning. And what we're finding as well in schools is that in staff toilets now, they've got affirmations up on the walls, so by the sink, by the mirror, behind the toilet doors. We're finding that people are kind of clicking on to affirmations are quite important.
Having visual prompters and reminders. And as well as a jar, you can just go old school and have a notebook, where you can have a gratitude journal. And again, science shows us that your brain literally cannot do two opposing things simultaneously. So an example would be if you walked into a room and it was pitch black, and then you put the light on, it cannot be dark and light at the same time. And in the same way, we cannot be grateful and discontent at the same time. So your brain is very clever at thinking, okay, so where do we put our focus here? So by putting your focus on the things that you're grateful for, we are forcing our brains to process the positive things in our world and in our lives. And to, again, it's like training for the marathon. You're doing the same things day in, day out, and eventually you've rewired your brain. You've relayed that neural pathway so that your thoughts are recognized as, oh, actually, these are really, really great things in my world, in my life. So yeah.
The last one then, handling mistakes, so reframing them as part of growth. Another thing that we do in our interventions is step ladder goals. So small steps for children instead of these massive big steps, because that can really damage our self-esteem. Sometimes the example that I use is, say they're not the greatest at maths, you're struggling a little bit with maths, and then all of a sudden the child is like, I'm going to get 10 out of 10 on my next test. Chances are, you know, you might not achieve the 10 out of 10. So then they're going to feel quite rubbish about themselves, might think I'm so stupid, I'm rubbish at maths. So I try and encourage them to do, right, how about the first step is try and get 5 out of 10. Next time then try and get like 7 out of 10. So that can be quite helpful.
I like using the magic power of yet as well. So
yeah,
if they can't do an equation or certain spelling, rather than saying, oh, I can't do it, you can't do it yet. So it gives them time then to improve.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay. So for further support, speak to the wellbeing lead in your child's school. We are linked to every school in Cwmtaf Morgannwg, so they should know who we are. So if you did want to have a chat with us, feel free to go in and ask if you can speak to the Shine practitioner. These are other websites that we recommend for you to have a look at. That's the CAMS resources link there as well. Some references. And yep, thank you for listening today. If you have got any questions or any comments, please stay and feel free to kind of have a chat with us for a little bit. I'm going to try and end the recording now. With the slides, what we're going to do is they're going to be, this has been recorded today, so this is going to be put on the CAMS website. So instead of sharing the slides, you can watch the training on, it was CTM, did I write it down?
Yeah, so if you put in your preferred search engine.
I put the link in the chat so they can click on it.
Oh, there we go.
There we are. The link is in the chat.
Link is in the chat. So if you want to grab that.
Fab.
Thank you.
I'm going to try and end the recording 1 second. I don't know.